Okay, I'd like to call to order the Parks and Recreation Commission meeting for December 11th. Can we please have a roll call?
Commissioner Candioti,
Yes.
Commissioner Cohen,
Yes.
Commissioner Kurzona,
Yes.
Commissioner Love. Here. Commissioner Montali. And Commissioner Riley.
Here.
And Chairperson Felix.
Here. Will you lead us to the flag?
Be happy to, thank you. Please stand.
Do you have a request for excuse absence?
Get the motion for the excuse absence.
Commissioner Mata Ali had a family issue this afternoon, had called, asked if you could consider excused absence, so you might want to.
I'll move that we accept the excused absence.
Second.
Okay.
Now we need a roll call.
Hold on.
Commissioner Candioti.
Yes.
Commissioner Cohen,
Yes.
Commissioner Kurzona,
Yes.
Commissioner Love,
Yes.
Commissioner Riley,
Yes.
Chairperson Felix.
Yes.
And there's no flag in there.
Right.
Flag!
Shall we pretend it's in that
Oh
corner?
my
where it
goodness
usually is?
gracious.
People have been pulling it up on their phones and holding it
Well, yeah.
It's fastest.
Let's just, we'll begin. How about that, okay? Put your hand over your heart. Ready? Begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you for your indulgence.
Did somebody say?
Well, clearly.
Borrowed it, not right.
I will take a motion to accept and file the report of the city clerk on the posting of the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Commissioner Candioti,
Yes.
Commissioner Cohen,
Yes.
Commissioner Kurzona,
Yes.
Commissioner Love,
Yes.
Commissioner Riley,
Yes.
Chairperson Felix.
Yes. Do we have minutes?
No, they're clearly, the minutes, it says here, are available. So you're gonna need to approve them at the next meeting.
We'll have two sets of minutes in the next meeting.
And now we are on to oral communications number 1. Comments on this portion of the agenda are limited to items not on the agenda and to no longer than 3 minutes per speaker. Under the provisions of the Brown Act, the Commission is prohibited from taking action or engaging in discussion on any item not appearing on the posted agenda. Anyone like to have a say?
Hello, Commissioners, staff. Jimmy Gow of the Social Services Commission. I thought I would take this opportunity to invite you all to participate in the homeless count that the Social Services Commission is hosting in January. So on Wednesday, January 22nd, 2020, from 8 p.m. to 11 p.m. and we'll be at the Ken Miller Recreation Center here in Civic Center. And the way you can sign up to participate is to go to the website, and it's www.theycountwillyou.org. And then you gotta go to, I think, a pull down and select Torrance Count as your location. So it's theycountwillyou, as all one word, .org, and then select Torrance as the count. And the reason this is important is it's done every year, and the count is the way that the county allocates money to homeless services for different areas. Torrance is in what's called SPA 8, or Service Planning Area 8. And so very important that we have an accurate count that reflects the number of homeless in our city, so that then when they allocate funds, we get appropriate funds. So, and our commission will in January, the very next day, begin work on our homelessness plan that will also enable us to apply for county funds for addressing the homeless situation. So I know you'll all be very interested in that. Probably there's some crossover with Parks and Recs in that regard. And so we'd love to have you all come out on Wednesday, January 22nd, 8 p.m. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gallo.
Oh, my Dan Molinelli, St. Andrew's Place. I was in touch with Tracy Drake. I don't know if she's here today. Oh, Tracy.
Hi.
Hi, how are you?
Welcome.
I'm Dan. We live in North Torrance, and we're a little dismayed at the appearance of the Gunsel Park. It looks like it's a little neglected. So what we would like to do, there's always a problem about trees growing in Gunsel Park. So what we would like to do is get together, we'll work with Tracy. We would like to donate trees for Gunsel Park and try to get them to go. I've already been in discussion with her. We'll set up a meeting, and whatever she approves, we'll try to donate trees to the parks, I guess, and get them planted at Gunsel or so. The other thing is the fitness course. I was there today, and it's in bad shape. I have friends that don't walk there anymore. They go to North High because the track is just too uneven for them to walk, so it's just grass. So we'd like to get that in shape. Also, we heard Columbia Park, the cherry trees, a lot of them have died or so. So maybe we could even work with you to get a donation to get those replaced or so. And I don't know if that's okay.
Wow, thank you. Yeah, staff will follow up, I assume.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thanks, Tracy.
Thank you.
Would anyone else like to have something? A moment.
Youth council is in the back?
Youth council's here.
Yes?
I
No?
don't think so.
Not youth council? Okay, just making sure. Okay, then we're good, then we're clear.
Can't tell. I need glasses.
Well, then we will move on to old business, discussion on the installation of a temporary community air monitoring trailer at Gunsel Park.
All right, so thank you, Commissioner. John Jones, Community Services Director. As you well know, on November 13th, EQMD staff presented a presentation regarding the community air monitoring trailer at Gunsel Park. There were several questions from the commission and information to be brought back. The request was to bring back to the December meeting more information from EQMD as to the overview of the other locations that were under consideration with pros and cons, and to review a couple of sites that were identified, one of the sites being La Carretera Park and the other an easement adjacent to Descanso Park. And representatives are here tonight to present this additional information. And in addition, I just want to let you know we've sent out again the public notices that we did last month also. We posted a couple signs. They probably got soaked in the rain, but they were out there. And we'll maybe at this point ask EQMD representatives to come forward and make the presentation, and then you can have questions.
Thank you, Mr. Jones.
Thank you very much, and good evening. Thank you, John, for the introduction.
I'm going to step away because it gets bright. I'm going to turn the lights down. Sorry, I can't think of
Wait, what is it?
My name is Olga, O-L-G-A. Last name is P like Peter, I-K-E-L-N-A-Y-A.
P-I-K-E-L-N-Y-A?
Is that better for you guys or you're?
That's perfect.
Okay. So can you see, guys? Okay.
Thank you very much for taking the time to listen to my additional presentation, additional information that we compiled since the last meeting. So I wanted to begin.
So you're a little light, so I just wanted to stick it in the light. We're going to turn that
Just
off.
pull it right up to
It is
your.
working.
It's where you need to get a little
Yeah,
closer.
very
Just a
Oh,
little.
sorry.
There we go.
Okay,
Perfect.
thank you. So if you can please advance to the first slide. So I just wanted to give a little bit of a background, begin to remind, this is, this rule is designed to monitor a very comprehensive list of air pollutants and air toxics that are associated with petroleum refineries. We call it Rule 1180. This is the local rule, but it also would satisfy the state law AB 1647 that requires fence line and community monitoring at all major refineries all over California. And the deadline for implementation of that law is actually January 1st of next year, 2020. So it's coming up. Next slide, please. So I wanted to give you an overview of like when we went about looking for community sites. On the right-hand side, you have like little diagram just to show how many different considerations go into selecting a site. So it's a very complicated and process, and not every site is suitable. So when we were looking for Torrance refinery specifically, this Google map shows each placemaker shows the site that we've evaluated for potential suitability of being a community air monitoring site. So just the regular yellow markers, these are all the sites that we evaluated. The green markers show like our preferred sites based on all these different site selection considerations. And the red markers show the 2 sites that were proposed by the residents during the last meeting. So what I wanted to just show, so essentially the sort of preferred sites are West High School, North High School, lot belonging to the city, and at El Avenue and the Ganser Park. So if you can advance to the next slide, I kind of compiled a summary of all the sites, and it doesn't have all considerations that go to selecting the site, but what it does have is like sort of practical considerations that are a must for the sites. Is essentially access to power, away from major obstructions, away from other large potential sources, for example, like a freeway, or like a large busy traffic intersection, and also 24-hour access is preferred. It's not 100% necessary, but it's definitely preferred since we have to run the sites 24/7 with real-time data providing to the community. And also another consideration was that this site actually within the community where people live, where people hike, where people spend time. And so so this four majors, what we called like preferred sites. So these 3 sites, the Elm Avenue and the 2 high schools, actually we have permissions to go in, and there are some that are already reporting as a part of the Torrance Air. So because we already had the sites selected, also the location of the remaining site, we were kind of constricted too, because we did not want the 4th site to be too close to the site that was already selected. So essentially that quadrant of northeast of the refinery was essentially the quadrant that we desperately need the site. So if you go to the next slide, please. So the two proposed locations we've evaluated. My staff went out and evaluated the suitability. So the La Carretera Park, on the surface, it looks like it's a good site. It's pretty open. However, the major drawback that it's right next to the 405 freeway. So the influence of 405 freeway essentially can mask everything else. And also there is like a very large freeway barrier on that picture on the right, and like if you can see how tall that barrier is, like that little dot on the bottom, that's actually a person walking their dog. So it's actually a pretty major obstruction when it comes to the airflow. So these are the 2 major concerns that we had about that particular location. And if you go to the next slide, please. And the next slide was the easement, essentially like right next to the nursery. And so what my staff reported, the major concern that they had, it's very uneven ground, and it's also that whole area is underneath the Edison power lines. So meteorological tower, it's something that would be difficult to erect there. And also what they pointed out is that there's a large soil pile at the nursery, and they were concerned about windblown dust that would clog the inlets of the instrumentation, as well as just the fertilizer use of the nursery and being right in the middle of it. That's a pretty significant source of ammonia that would also skew the readings. So if you move to the next slide, please. So I just wanted to show again like the two options that we presented the last time, essentially behind the bathroom facilities and on the side. And we also evaluated, if you go to the next slide, please, we also revisited the site on the northern portion of the park that was also sort of like casually proposed that maybe an alternative. Like I mentioned in the last meeting, we discounted that area primarily because there are also Edison power lines. But we kind of evaluated it again, and if you would allow us to go in that area, maybe just a little bit south, so we're not directly under the power lines, that would be definitely also be acceptable location for us, and in a certain sense, maybe even better than the bathroom, because there is like a power electrical transformer right there, so it would be like super duper easy to get power. So like I just wanted to point out when you're making your decision that this also would be would be an option for us.
Excuse me, what about the dust from the field, from the diamond itself? Wouldn't that be effective, like you were concerned about dust at the other location? Wouldn't that be dusty too?
Right, so I think this one is like, probably during the games, it would be a problem, right?
Tracy, Park Services Manager, we drag the fields nearly every day, so with a screen really, and it pops the clay up in the air, and it's very fine particles over there.
Okay.
So that might be a consideration for you, I don't know.
Okay, it's good to know, yeah. Okay. And then I also wanted to give you a little bit more information on the trailer itself. So this is the picture, the actual trailer that would go to the site. And I have Robert Wimmer, one of my staff, next to it, so you kind of get an idea of the size of the trailer. So the obviously we would put a fencing around it, and it would be at least 8 feet high or even higher to conceal the trailer completely. And the height of the meteorological tower that we have, it extends up to 30 feet, but it's also adjustable. So somewhere between, I guess, I would say 15 feet, that would be the height that I would estimate the tower that we would have to extend. So if you go to the next slide. So we also investigated what are the possible fencing options that we could choose. So the very top one, that green slated fence, that's what we usually put in our locations. So for example, like all Rule 1180 community monitoring sites in Carson, that's in Carson, Wilmington, Long Beach area, that's essentially the type of fencing that we're using. However, like after the meeting, Mr. Jones forwarded me some suggestions from the Torrance residents that were very, very helpful, and we actually looked on the website, and it's really awesome, things that people can create with something like a fence. So the options, obviously, to put some kind of artwork, and we have a very, very talented art people at EQMD that obviously can design something that can go on that slated fence, or maybe we can even put some other type of artwork on the fence. And there are also other ideas, like for example, like a fake grass fence that would completely conceal the station. So these are the options that we are investigating, and we're definitely open to other suggestions. And I think with this, I am going to conclude, and I thank you very much for your attention, and I hope for the positive outcome.
Thank you. Do any of my fellow commissioners have any questions? Does anyone in the audience have any questions?
Well, we have a presentation. Okay.
Lori's got a question.
Yes, I'm curious on the size of this trailer. And this may sound like a silly question, but why does it have to be so big?
So we have, like I showed the list of the equipment, so there's actually quite a few air toxics that we have to measure. So we try to maximize, we try to select the instrumentation that measure multiple compounds at the same time. But even with that, there's still quite a bit of instrumentation that has to go inside the trailer. So that's primarily what decides the size. So having said that, like if we, essentially we need this size trailer to install the entire suite of instrumentation. If, let's say, we were cut back and like selected the instruments that have smaller footprint, that we could probably bring a smaller trailer. And we actually do have a couple of smaller trailers, which are probably like 50% size of the one that I showed.
Interesting. And then what, I understand, kind of the history of why we're doing this and all of that, but I'm still unclear as to how this will contribute to making things safer or better for residents.
Like in my opinion, so, well, first of all, like we have to do it because it's a state law, so we have to implement it. But like in my personal opinion, so there is a lot of distrust that I've experienced between the refinery and the community, every community that we're in. And so I think this type of measurements will make the refinery activities more transparent, and will essentially once and for all show what is the actual impact of refineries on air quality. Especially like this particular program, it's very interesting because refineries will be doing their own fence line monitoring, and we are doing community monitoring. So we will be actually able to differentiate, what are the air quality impacts of the refinery, and maybe there are other sources that also influence the local air quality, which we didn't even know about, and they don't even come from refineries, and we would never know if we don't do these measurements. Also, like we've in the last few years, we've done a lot of pilot projects quantifying the emissions of the refineries, and what we had discovered that a lot of the emissions from the refinery is underestimated, and it's due to fugitive emissions. So these are the emissions that essentially go undetected because there's no instrumentation in place currently to catch them in a timely manner. And sometimes refinery finds them, but it's like 40, 30 days later. So this type of monitoring will essentially alert everybody that something is going on that causes increased air pollution concentrations, that especially and together with meteorological measurements, it would allow us to find out where this increase is coming from and fix it and mitigate it much quicker.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Reddick?
Yes, I have 3 questions. The configuration of the trailer, is that a long-term permanency configuration, or is that just short-term to get this set up? Will it look different in a year from now, or is that the permanent configuration?
So that trailer is designed for temporary type of measurements. So like the request that I have right now is essentially to take these measurements for up to a year to see whether Gunsler Park is a suitable location. So if we were to do this on a permanent basis, like real permanent station, it would probably be something like a more permanent looking container, like for example, like those shipping containers retrofitted as a temporary as an office space, this type. So this configuration is essentially a temporary configuration.
Okay, thank you. And then the second one, now that they brought up about the ball field having potential dust, do you still propose that as an alternate site, or do you need to consider that since that information just came up tonight?
I think I would still, would explore a possibility because it's not constant, so it seems like it's a periodic, right? So this probably something that we would be willing to explore, like if we drop a container, let's see what happens.
And then my last question out of curiosity, is this data downloaded in real time, or does somebody have to go to the trailer and download the data and assess it?
It would be in real time, and it would be reported on the website in near real time. So there would be time delay, I anticipate somewhere between 10, 15 minutes time delay
Sure.
between the data is collected and then it's posted on the web.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Commissioner Kurtzonis?
I just have a couple more logistical questions, but, so option 3, assuming it does work and is approved, that is more, it seems like it'd be more visible, correct? Because option 1 appears like it's behind the building, maybe,
Well, it's perception. So option 3 from perspective is less visible to the majority of residents because it's way at the far north end of the park and tucked kind of near a shrub base at the end of the cul-de-sac. But to the individual who lives at the end of the cul-de-sac, it's going to be pretty obvious. So, the one near the bathroom, out of the 2, you'll have less visibility street side with option 1 than you would with 2, because it's tucked behind the bathroom. 6 one way, half dozen another.
and another thing, I kind of remember hearing in the November meeting talk about the more permanent option. I thought somebody said something about it being on top of potentially being on top of a building. Is that something that has been done, is possible, or?
Oh, so what we were talking about, actually, if we determine that the Ganser Park is the place, that there is like a storage or custodian space in between the 2 bathrooms, and so city had offered for us to go there. But it would be actually a pretty significant investment to bring that space up to standards in terms of air conditioning and other improvements that would need to be done to that space.
But it would be an option for a permanent, if Ganser Park is determined to be the spot you want a permanent solution, that would be a potential.
Yes.
Commissioner Sandy?
I know that we discussed in the November meeting, as I think I remember, I was the one who asked if there was a problem with putting it next to the bathrooms, if the chemicals from the bathroom itself could present an issue. And then the other thing was, you had mentioned that it's very possible that this could detect other elements in the air that's not specifically coming from the refinery. We don't know. I mean, there could be some other things. Is there a way, let's say you found 2, 3 other things in the air quality, is there a way to go back and track where they're coming from? If there's something significant that is not coming from the refinery specifically?
Yes. So that's why we have a meteorological station, because when we take a measurement, if we have a wind speed and wind direction associated with it, that we can backtrack from that information where that air was coming from. Yeah, so that's, the short answer is yes.
Detective work.
Yeah, detective work, exactly.
To be clear, you're only looking for a certain set of chemicals, right? You're not looking for a broad spectrum.
Well, no, but that's specifically coming from the refinery, because we know that there might be these 10 chemicals coming from the refinery. But if all of a sudden they find one out here in the wing somewhere, it could be coming from a business, a commercial facility that's producing something that's nasty too, we should know about that. That's all my consideration is, but, so, okay, thank you.
Dr. Love?
I have one more question about the space, the janitorial space where you might be able to put something in there, and you mentioned that it would be more costly. Who incurs that cost?
The South Coast AQMD would have to pay for it.
So there wouldn't be a cost to the city of Torrance,
No,
and it wouldn't be visible from the street, correct?
It wouldn't be a new footprint. It would be within an existing footprint. Visibility might be antennas on the top of the roof.
But it wouldn't be another structure in the park.
Correct.
correct.
I got one more. You had mentioned just the distrust between the community and the refinery, and that this is kind of either holding them accountable or proving proving that they are doing a good job or they're not doing a good job. Do we have any sort of results out of the current, the ones that are live right now? Are we seeing the numbers as the air quality reflecting what we expected to reflect? Are we learning new things? Is it less than we thought it would be?
So, so the sites that are operational right now, they have like a very small subset of instruments that, let's say, what we are planning to, to install, but nonetheless, the key components like H2S and the benzene and toluene and xylenes, which are, known as BTEs. So it's actually very interesting data. Like the Torrance Air website has been operational for about a month. And interestingly enough, there are some, I would not say they're not very high levels of benzene, but let's say levels of benzene that like about 2 ppb that we almost seen almost every day. It's not clear whether it's associated with the refinery or not. Sometimes you look at the map and you look from where the wind was coming from, and it looks like it's like, oh yeah, it could be associated with the refinery. But sometimes it's just sort of like there. So it's a great question. I don't have an answer to it right now, but we're definitely looking into it. We have some theories. Like I'm saying, this is essentially the first community monitoring type of experiment that's been implemented anywhere. So we really don't know what community levels of this compounds are. So it's very well be that something like 2 ppb of benzene from time to time, this is normal for the community. Maybe not. Right now I cannot tell for sure. But it's definitely already producing interesting results.
Can I ask an additional question?
We have time out. So we'll get the community, I'm trying
Sure,
to
sorry.
get it done, and then we'll let the presentation going, then we'll do that. Yeah.
You will have your shot.
Yeah.
Coming up. Anybody else? It's your time.
Okay, so-
Communities.
So I have a presentation from the community that we'd like to get done first. Right? Yeah. And I'll get the light for you. Do you have the, Jason, do you have everything?
We're all on hard copy, I need to go through.
And then, Commissioner, then my thoughts are that once this presentation takes place, we can open up to the community as a whole.
Yeah.
Okay?
All right, good evening. My name is Tim Kinnair. I want to talk about specifically the Gunnison Park location. If you would advance to the next slide, people, please. Okay, so the Rule 1180, it identified 11 potential locations in the North Torrance area for this trailer. The lady showed the 11 locations in Gunnison Park. In my opinion, I've looked at most of them. All of them would be better than Gunnison Park, which is putting in a park in a very public place. It would impact local residents and people using the park. It's a heavily used park. The proposed locations are right there in the picnic area. Last time when we came in November, there were probably half a dozen local residents from there. None of them wanted the trailer located there. If you read Rule 1180 Community Air Monitoring Plan, Section 2.1.1, it says that when selecting a site, you want to get input from the community members. Well, the local community members, we don't want it there. It's a bad place to put it in the park. There are better locations to put it. The other thing about the community Rule 1180 camp that's ambiguous is, and there's a typo in my charts, Table 1 in Section 1.2 says that Torrance Refinery will have 2 community air monitoring stations, 2, not 4 that are being planned. It says 2. But it's also ambiguous because there's another section, 2.1.1.2, under the Supplemental Environment Project that was instituted as an agreement when they had the accident there a few years ago at the refinery. We'll put up 3 temporary ones for 2 years. So there's ambiguity. Is it 2? Is it 3? Or is it 5, right? But we're planning on 4. And that was the temporary things are for 2 years, and what's being asked for here is 1 site, or 4 sites for 1 year. So there's ambiguity in what's being asked for, what's required by the camp, and the final requirement is 2, and you've already got 2. You've got 1 on Elm Avenue, 1 at North High School. Do you want, please? It's going to blow the aesthetics of Gunnison Park. Those are trailers from the Rule 1180 camp. That's figure 1 in there, the types of trailers that will come. If you put fencing around it, it gets even bigger. So I took this picture out of my living room window, lest you think it won't be a problem for me. It would sit right there. You would have to move that grandfather and his granddaughter to put that trailer in proposed location too. They were having a nice afternoon after the rainstorm. If you tuck it behind, it'll be marginally better, but this thing is about 12 plus feet high. With the equipment on it, the meteorological station will extend it up to 20, 30 feet in the air. So, you know, it's gonna be an eyesore no matter what you do with it. Then if you look at the trailer on the right, the one red arrow down, they have a large air conditioning unit on there. That's because they're putting a lot of equipment inside the room, and the more equipment they put in there, the more heat it generates, the more that air conditioner is gonna run. I don't know if I'll be able to hear it or not. My windows are open all summer long, all spring long, but the people using the picnic area will certainly hear that air conditioner when they're picnicking, and it's a heavily used thing. You see birthday parties, things there all the time. So we're gonna plunk in the middle of our park, this big ugly thing. So let's go forward. So here's a picture from the camp plan, Rule 1180 camp plan that has the 11 sites in North Torrance. It also has these wind roses on there that show, in the upper left, that show the prevailing wind directions from LAX and from Hawthorne. And so I've taken the predominant wind direction there and I've created those red arrows. And if you just plunk them down at the north end of the refinery, they all blow more eastern than northeastern. So typically, it's going to be very diluted when it gets to north. And if you really want to go down where the bad stuff is, a little farther down in the refinery and over in the storage areas, you got to be almost on a northerly trajectory to get to Gunson Park. But going east puts you in the industrial area. So they don't want them in the industrial area, they want them in the community, so you do go to North Torrance. So given that, where's the best place to put it? So we look through that as well. So if we go to the next slide. There were 4 locations identified in the camp. 2 are on school property, west and north high. Oh, if you go to the website, the 4 that are identified for Torrance, 2 are on school property at north and west. 1 is in a vacant lot off of Elm Street. It's right over here. God only knows why that's a vacant lot, but it's this big plot of land that's surrounded by a concrete wall about this high, so you can't see inside it from the street, right? So you walk up and you tiptoe and you look over the wall, and it's just this big lot, and the trailer is plunked right in the middle of that. So you really can't see it, so it's a good location for it. The one at north, it's tucked in back in where other physical plant type equipment is, so it's in a non-public area, it's already fenced in, it blends in. It's actually one of the nicer looking things back in there. The only one that's proposed for a park is Gunson Park, right? Why would you plot it in a park? It's used by the public. It's going to be right there in a public area. So my wife and I, we walked the local area. We found 6 potential alternate locations for the trailer, 5 in addition to the Rule 1180 camp. And I'll just go through a few of those. There's lots of locations.
We do need to keep it to something.
I am. I'm going fast. Go to the next slide, please. But I mean, this is going to affect my life for the rest of it, right? The rest of the time I live here. This thing is one of the 6 criteria for selecting the site was its suitability as a permanent location. So make no mistake, what you choose will end up being permanent if we put it there. So there's the one at North High School. There's the big trailer with the step on the area on the top. It's sandwiched between existing structures, the big transformer, another storage trailer, and just to the right of that, that's not in the picture, are another set of trailer-type buildings that are put there. And even this is, you know, you put a fence, it's only going to go halfway up. You know, it's not going to go up 12 feet, right, to cover the whole thing. And then if you go over there, look at, there's a ladder jammed underneath the trailer. There's a furniture trolley just leaned up against it. There's another step ladder on the other side, so it's not even a well-maintained area, right? It's just kind of slopped in there. Go to the next slide. That's a good location for it because there's other crap around there too, right? You know, it's not a public area that people frequent. If you go to Elm Street, this is a big lot. You know, and you see the concrete wall along the street in the bottom picture. This thing's plunked out in the middle with like a 25-foot weather station on the top. And that's what we're talking putting into Gunson Park, right there in front of everybody, where people are picnicking around it, they're playing ball around it. You know, everything's going on there. I mean, this is a good location. Nobody goes here, right? It's fenced off. Nobody can get into access to it or anything. It's not bothering anybody there. So if you go forward. So this is, this is the chart, Torrance Air monitoring chart. So I just went around and located, we walked around one day and located 6 other locations. If you go forward, so the first one is Hamilton School. I think that would be a good thing. They think it's maybe too close to the freeway, but it looks good. If you go next slide, please.
I've really got to, we
Okay,
got to
just
get
one
to
minute.
everyone
I mean,
else
this
to
is
have their fair
important,
share
right?
of time.
Okay, so Hamilton Park, went around there, took pictures. There's lots of locations where you could stick this in Hamilton Park. Wouldn't affect anybody. Go to the next one. Why don't you put it in Cashmere? Cashmere has a huge field, middle school there. They have this new building. It's new now. The fencing shows it there. But if you go down, there's a storage trail right behind the building. You could plunk it in there. There's power in that building. You could integrate it into the science curriculum there and have tours of the equipment and things like that. And that would directly support Rule 1180, Section 2.4 public education. So you could do something like that and make it worthwhile. But that's a huge field. There's a new building there, so there would be power. You could plunk it right behind there, right next to the existing storage trailer that's there. Okay, next slide. And this is the thruway. I mean, I would imagine that if you're worried about pneumonia from the Northfield, all those people in all those houses there would be pretty upset about that. Because they live right there, plus the ground is flat. I walk through there all the time. So if you're really worried about ammonia, the people in the properties there should be worried about it too. And there's power poles at each end of that park. In the power lines, those are those big power, they're high. A 20-foot weather station, 30-foot weather station, not even a close to those power lines, they're high. So, I'm here to urge you guys not to put this thing in Gunter Park. It's a public park. None of the other stations are going to be out in the open, accessible by the public, but this one will be right there. It will be an eyesore. It'll make noise that will affect people using the park, may even affect the local residents. The local residents don't want it. And if it goes in there now, long-term availability is one of the site selection criteria. So if you put it in there, they say they like it, boom, it's going to end up being there permanently. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Turn the lights on.
You can actually see my agenda.
There you go.
Okay, if anyone else from the audience would like to speak, you've got 3 minutes, and you do need to fill in a speaker card, please.
I go first?
Yeah, no, I was just grabbing a card. Did you already fill in?
Yeah, I already followed.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll go first. I like to agree with Tim. Have you looked at
Okay,
Arlington?
so time out, let me
You need
set some
to talk
rules.
to us, we'll refer
Speak to the commission, and if
Okay.
they defer, they defer.
Okay, the one on North High, I was there, I've been there, it's actually next to the track trailer, it's on the southeast, west side or so, so it is out of sight, it's by the cell tower. It's rather tall, but, you're wondering what that is, but have you looked, it is TUSD property, it's not city property. So have you looked at Arlington? What's wrong with Arlington? Or I agree, maybe even Cashmere, but Arlington would fit the bill. The other thing, if you put it behind the restroom, that means the egress and exit of the restrooms, the men's and women's, will be cut off. So you have to actually go around the building. And there's actually a walkway right there from the baseball field on that. So that means that people, you have to put new walkways through fences, a 30-foot fence separating that part of the park from the restrooms. To get to the restrooms, or they have to do a walk around all the way. So it's a little inconvenience or so. The other issue that I had, I really wanted to speak about the torranceair.org app. Right now, it's only monitoring 2 stations, B and C. I believe that's west and north. There's no fence monitoring of that, I guess. Can that be added? The other thing is that I would like historical data. So if you look at other online applications, real-time applications, you have now for like a 5-minute reporting, you have a 1 hour, 1 day, 1 week, 1 month, and 1 year. It's really not useful to see a 5-minute snapshot or even a 1 hour snapshot. You really want to see historical data. The other things for the carcinogens, the benzenes and the black carbon, you want to see a threshold. Okay, it's 2 parts per billion. Is that good for us? Or maybe she said, well, that may be normal. Well, if there's a threshold of 5 and you're going to be dead if it goes to 6, okay, I want to know that. I want to see historical, okay, and as I said, 5 minutes, we may be dead in 5 minutes. So that's what I'm saying. So you want historical data. You want to be able to drill through that. And I also like to see fence monitors. I believe the fence monitors are already up. I believe there's 6 of them around the refinery. How many are there?
Well, we can have her answer that.
Okay, good, good.
Is that
Thank
all
you.
your questions?
Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Like you can have the representative come up and answer those questions.
Yeah, can someone from the AQMD answer those?
All right, so I think I kind of kept track. So the first question was like whether we evaluated Arlington as one of the possible locations. Arlington High School, we did. It's very close to Gunser Park. So the two sort of issues that my staff found, depending on where that container would be located, there could be like issues with power. So like the report that I got back, we may or may not be able to find the location that, that we can route the power easily. And another concern that they had was not being able to access that site, 24/7, so having it just only during business hours and not having access on the weekends. So those are the two major concerns that they had. So in terms of like community monitoring data that's right now being reported. So that's been reported not by South Coast AQMD. It's a project that Sonoma Technology does called Torrance Air, and it's funded by the South Coast AQMD. So they just went online just over a month ago, and so there's still kinks that have been worked out. So they set up 3 sites. One site there is not in operation because they're waiting for Southern California Edison to hook up power. So the 2 sites that are operational, they're constantly upgrading it and making it better in terms of data display. So right now they're displaying 5 minutes. They're displaying 5 minutes data and also 1 hour average data. And for 1 day, for 24 hours. So when you go online, you see a chunk of time, which is the latest 24 hours. That is true, they currently don't have a way to download the data, but that's coming up in the pipeline. In terms of the fence line monitoring, so the Torrance Air is setting up their monitors right now. I actually got email that they will be delivering equipment on site to the refinery tomorrow and start installation on Friday. So that's happening, it's coming up, as well as the rest of the refinery fence line monitoring system hopefully will be online too very, very soon. I think I covered that.
He also asked about the RELs, the
Oh,
acute
yeah.
and the chronic exposure.
Oh yeah, excellent question, actually. Thank you. So yes, so like the way that the data is displayed right now, it shows what the current concentration is, and then it shows a bar on top that what's the relative exposure limit is. This is a health-based threshold that's set by the California, essentially it's called OEHA. It's a I guess sort of like a health authority in California that sets what the health-based limits of exposure for different compounds. So what it shows right now, it's called acute relative exposure limit, which is 1 hour. So if that particular pollutant concentration exceeds 1 hour average of that threshold, that's considered to be not healthy for sensitive individuals. So that's essentially what it shows right now. There are also other thresholds, health thresholds. They're adding more information on what they are and how they relate. The reason why it's right now compared to 1 hour relative exposure threshold, because this is the closest health-based threshold that is available, that in time most closely relates to what we actually measure. So essentially time stamp or the time duration is the most closely related.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to make a comment or a question?
Hello, my name is Catherine Lays. I am a community member in Torrance. I'm also one of the founders of South Bay Flair, which has about 2,000 Torrance families in it. I'm currently on the commission, or the committee for the creation and the installing of the Sonoma Tech project, which is using South Coast Air Quality Management District plans on the community side. So I've been helping work with Sonoma Tech since the beginning, so about 3.5 years. I was also on the Rule 1180 working group. So I've been to a lot of meetings like this, and I'm really empathetic for the not in my backyard and the placing of things. But I just want to share my support of this going in. And, you know, there's the balance. Like, we have the worst air in the nation here. She mentioned the benzene that's been picked up. It's been about 2 parts per billion to about 4 parts per billion sometimes for about 8 to 12 hours at a time. The chronic threshold for your reference is 0.9. So 0.9 parts per billion, and we're seeing 2 to 4 parts per billion. Okay, so we're over it. And if you use MATES data, which is the background data for benzene, for example, for anywhere in Los Angeles that's not near a refinery, it's 0.4. So we have things in our air, and the only way we make progress and have a healthier future for our children is to know what is in the air. And the AQMD can't do their job. They can't govern the refinery if they don't actually have the ability to monitor. They can't make them invest in cleaner technology and to do better upkeep if they don't have data to back up their plans. So I'm in full support of anything that's, like, you know, as little of an eyesore as possible. You know, I'm a homeowner as well. I understand that. But, you know, I just want to give my full support, and speaking on behalf of about 2,000 families whose kids go to parks all the time. They are anxious to see this go live. And I don't know if you have any questions for me, I'm happy to share them, but that's it. Thank you.
So I would like to ask.
Hold on. Come up to the podium, please.
Okay.
Oh, you've done that. Okay.
So, well, you want to yield me your 3
So,
minutes?
yeah, so you already had your time.
Okay.
Someone else has to ask for you, and they come up
So
with
that's why, ask if her opinion was for Gunther Park specifically, or a location in North Torrance.
Well,
Ask the commission to ask her.
It's the process.
yes, it is. That was well done. I'll give you credit for that one.
Could you ask her if this is North
Her
Torrance?
opinion.
Her opinion is just at Gunzer Park, where it needs to be at Gunzer Park, or if it can be elsewhere, monitored elsewhere in North Torrance?
Do you have an opinion on that, Kathy?
Sure.
We'll need a speaker card for you now.
So I'm happy to have the monitors wherever they will do their job. So I've been involved with this for years. They've been evaluating many sites for a really long time. As you've heard, there's so much that goes into it. It's been, what, like 6 months to try to get SoCal Edison to get power to one of these locations. I mean, the delays on the Sonoma Tech project, which was supposed to go in 2.5 years ago, have been mostly due to site problems, to power, to getting permission. So these things move slow. This is the law. It's supposed to go in January. So no, I mean, I don't have strong feelings. I would have been happy if it was at the park right by my house. I live right by Paradise Park. Yeah, I would have been bummed. You know, like, yeah, there's a little area that doesn't look attractive, but I think in this scheme of generational health, that's more important. But no, I mean, wherever they recommend and wherever everyone can come to a, you know, a happy middle area where everyone feels okay about it, I support. I just know I know that it's difficult to find a site that doesn't have the freeway, that's not close to the refinery. There's a lot of things that work and that have power. So, no, I don't have strong feelings about this part. I just have strong feelings about it getting done. Super. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments?
So you've asked your question.
Okay.
Ask your question of the next person.
Does anybody else wish to make a comment?
Jim Dow, North Torrance resident and longtime follower of this issue going back even before the big explosion. I think that kind of is impetus for a lot of this discussion, in that if the wind had not been blowing, in an unusual direction that day and rain all of the stuff down on the south end racket club and areas to the west rather than the normal wind direction which blows to the north or northeast, then we probably wouldn't be having this conversation. But because that awareness of that explosion created an awareness of not only the MHF at the refinery, but also the particulate matter that we're measuring at, with the monitoring, I think it's important, especially for the North Torrance residents, to have a right actually to know what's in the air. I watched it from my front porch, and they're sneaky. They do it very often at night, and you can watch from the flare stacks and the other stacks at the refinery. It blows a lot of times due north, directly over to what would be the direction of El Camino, for example. But I've also watched it blow right over my home, and I live pretty close to Arlington and to the park as well. And so I think we have a right to know what's in our air. And again, we wouldn't be talking about this if it had blown towards North Torrance and towards Harbor Gateway and towards Carson, because no one's going to make a fuss like when it blew west and to the south from the explosion. So we have a right to know, and I trust that the AQMD, like Catherine said, has done their homework in terms of locating locations. It's very interesting that you came up with 5 or 6 different locations, but I bet that they probably already covered those and wound up with Gunther as being the optimum place for this to be. So
It's not optimum other than there's a power pole right there.
well, I bet they would love to see your information, because maybe that might affect it in some way, but my guess is that they took into consideration all of this information, and they're arriving at this being an optimum place to put the trailer for temporary for a year and then build a permanent site if the park is indeed even considered an optimum place. But I do know we need some monitoring. Fence line monitoring only does so much in terms of getting what's coming out of it, but if you notice, especially when it flares, it doesn't stay at the fence line of the refinery. It goes up in the air and it goes far afield, probably even past, a lot of times, into Harbor Gateway, past North Torrance and into Harbor Gateway and into Carson. So very important that we know what's in our air. It affects our children, it affects our property values, I'm sure, and we have a right to know. So I would urge you to get this going, and if the park is the recommendation of the AQMD, then I stand by that. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other comments from the community? Do any of my commissioners or fellow commissioners have
May I ask one
questions?
more question?
No.
No.
But I do appreciate your ask.
Okay.
Back up to the commission.
No questions? No.
So actually, this is directed to Mr. Jones. Is there anything that we can negotiate here? I mean, it's just like what's being proposed is a recommendation by the city to accept this. So is there a way to say if a certain site or some sort of fencing that would make this more aesthetically appealing than some of the photos that we've seen here as examples?
Sure, there's mitigation actions you can take. Yeah, and that's certainly within your realm of responsibility. If you feel that, the location that is being offered are suitable, you can talk about mitigation issues of what's the minimal amount of impact. Keep in mind this is a temporary opportunity. I do agree that the intent is to find a permanent location, but I do believe that we've already thought ahead of that game, because if it is a permanent location, I strongly recommended the use of the utility room that's there existing. It would not create an eyesore, it'd be tucked away, you wouldn't even know it's there.
The room would need to be air conditioned.
The room would have, you're right, it's not a my nickel. So my point is if that is deemed a suitable site, that will be the location of the permanent location. And it will not be a trailer out in the middle of the park. So, I'm just saying, a community doesn't know it's a suitable site until they test it. So my recommendation is that you move forward on this and try to mitigate it as best you can for the neighborhood for the next year.
Any other questions?
I have a question about Casimir Middle School. And was that explored at all? Because I know that they do have a large acreage there. And I had a question because I got a little bit of conflicting information about access and the need for 24-hour access, and that you couldn't get access for 24 hours at Casimir or Arlington because they're school sites, but you can at North High and West High, and they're also school sites. So I don't understand that.
Olga, maybe come up and answer that, please.
Yeah, so we don't have 24-hour access at North and West High as well. Yeah, so that's, but again, you know, you're trying to find the best possible situation. So all other boxes checked, except for this one. That was kind of like, you know, a primary, also like a toggle between like Arlington and the park, right? That the Arlington, you don't have a location. And in addition to that, we were kind of not sure whether we can get power to it. To be honest, Kashmir School, I do not believe we explored it. I'm trying to look on the Google Earth right now. My preliminary answer, I think we thought maybe. My staff thought it was a little bit too far east.
Too far north is north of our.
Would be north.
Because it's even more north than the park, right? Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah, so I think that was the problem, because we were already pretty far north. Yeah.
Olga, you might take another look at Casimir because you have a kind of a double bonus there. Not only is the space allocatable to because it's so big and so spacious, but at the same time you have the scientific program for the students that can be very, very profound in the city of Torrance.
Okay.
I mean, we both registered that as soon as we saw that on the screen, that's a bonus to the campus and to the students at that school.
Right, yeah, we can definitely look into it. And if I may just say a few words. So in terms, I think if the main concern is essentially, you know, the size of the trailer, like I mentioned, we do have a smaller trailer. So if we can at least start with a temporary site, with smaller trailer, with reduced size of the instrumentation, that would still be appealing to us. Thank you.
Thank you. Andrea?
Dr. Kanaya, I apologize if I didn't say that correctly. What would be the size of the smaller trailer?
I don't have it with me. It's probably half the size of the trailer that I showed.
Okay.
Yeah, so like I think it's probably like, I don't know, maybe it's still, it's much shorter. It's probably like maybe 8 feet tall.
Instead, this one was 10.
This
so
one
would
was
be about
10,
8.
yeah,
But it'd
about
still be
8.
about 8 by 19.
No, it's much shorter. So I would say
Oh.
like 8 by 10. something
8 by
like
10?
that, yeah.
Okay.
And
I
then,
have one more question. As equipment gets through evolution, things tend to get smaller, more compact. What is your projection for what the size of this would look like in the future? I mean, if we construct a building and then over time, equipment gets more efficient and compact, I'm kind of thinking like, do you know where we go in a year from now?
this is an excellent question. So, you know, you're right, there's a lot of research and a lot of development being done of doing these measurements much quicker and also with much smaller, you know, sort of devices. The problem with this type of devices is that their detection capability is not at this really, really low concentration levels of what we're looking for, you know, for the community site. And we actually made quite a large investment with the equipment that we bought right now. It's we spent about roughly $3 million investment in the equipment. So I don't anticipate that this equipment that we purchased right now, that we will change it in a matter of a few years. Maybe in a matter of, I don't know, a decade, for sure, maybe. But like right now, probably not in the very near future.
So you wouldn't be compromising anything by going with a smaller size trailer?
So we would be compromising the number of pollutants that we would be monitoring. So for example, for benzene, toluene, 1,3-butadiene, acrolein, like air toxics, we actually plan to have two types of equipment. One type, it's a multi-pollutant analyzer that's based on absorptions, like a similar technology what refineries are deploying at the fence line, except instead of doing like along the fence line, we're concentrating it in a cell. And those cells, they can produce very rapid results. So that's how you get these 5-minute concentrations. The downside of it, you cannot get to this very, very, very low sort of like chronic exposure levels. You're just on the border, but you're just not good enough. So to get to this chronic exposures, we bought another type of equipment. It's called micro GC. Gas chromatographer, but that's kind of like a next generation of the system that has like a much smaller footprint. So let's say if we go with the smaller trailer, we would have to forego those big optical cells for some compounds. So we would have, for example, HF and H2S in real time every 5 minutes with very low detection limits because we have dedicated instruments for those compounds. And then we would have micro GC that would get all that other toxics, but they would be only in 1 hour time resolution. So we would lose that immediate sort of like notification capability.
Okay, all right, thank you.
David?
Yeah, I was gonna say, as a North Torrance resident and somebody that lives reasonably close to the refinery, I definitely see the benefit to doing this, and I understand not my backyard aspect of it. I will say, if you guys want to put one by Edison Elementary, you're welcome to use my backyard. I think it's a valuable benefit to the community, and because of all that, I'm going to move that we accept staff's recommendation, approve the usage of locations 1, 2, or 3, depending on the AQMD preference, since we have the issues with the dirt, and direct city to work with AQMD to find a good fencing solution.
Do I have a second?
I second.
Can I please have a roll call?
So you're saying accept recommendation 1, 2, or 3, depending on AQMD's preference, and work with the city to what?
To find an appropriate fencing solution.
Okay. Commissioner Candiotti,
I'm going to abstain.
Commissioner Cohen,
Yes.
Commissioner Kartsonis,
Yes.
Commissioner Love,
No.
Commissioner Riley,
No.
Chairperson Feeney.
Yes.
So that's 3 yeses, 2 noes, and 1 abstain.
So motion
That's
carries.
correct. Okay.
I would like to thank everyone for their participation in this.
That did not pass, correct? Does it need 4 votes to pass?
It's a majority,
Individual majority.
even majority, simple majority.
Now you need 4 no matter what.
It's a simple majority of voters. You have 6 here, and you have 3 yeses, 2, and a 1. So I don't know, if an abstaining gets taken out, so a simple majority would make it
It
pass.
goes to council anyway, doesn't it?
We would need 4 out of the 7 on the commission.
It's a majority of those in attendance, correct?
I think it's a majority of those in attendance. I guess I would have to verify that, you don't have to abstain.
So I have 3.
I believe it's the majority.
Majority of those in attendance would be 3, but you have an abstain, which means a no vote. It's a 0 vote. So I'll tell you what, I do not know that answer. So it's a great question.
Make it subject to,
So I think that we can qualify it. What we'll do is we'll take this, it doesn't go, this doesn't go to council.
Take a 5-minute recess and see if we can answer.
Yeah, if we can do that.
We will call 5-minute
Yeah,
recess.
let's do that.
And
And we'll get it done tonight.
we'll find out tonight. 5-minute recess.
All right. It's all about a first for everything. No flags.
Yeah, exactly.
this one says,
Right. Does it have theirs?
The lights too.
Well, the law, the one, that was supplemental.
John?
So SCP is running free. They have to.
All right.
Well, and plus, north and west aren't the direction that the wind actually blows.
Well-
North Torrance needs to know
No, it's
what's going on.
11 o'clock in the morning, it's onshore, in the afternoon, it's offshore. Yeah, so it switches a lot. So 11 o'clock.
Well, I know, and that's what I'm saying, the fluke of the explosion was that
Yeah.
it also goes south and west, it covered South Bend Racket, and everyone freaked out. And I get, like I said, I guarantee you, if it had blown over Carson, no one would care.
Yeah, yeah. The only thing is, I'd rather have it at school because the lease is locked up during the day and night. It's in a public area, we're feeding families, graffiti will come. Yeah, and especially if you put it behind.
Stuff in there, I might go.
Yeah, exactly. They stole a container at San Pedro Bosque. They cut the chain and took the trailer. Somebody's gonna come back with a truck. Towed in front down, take the trailer. $3 million. $3 million worth of equipment.
That no one can use it.
Yeah. I don't have a truck anymore.
Oh, there you go. Thank you, sir.
I have your husband.
Yeah, he's on the,
I know, but what I'm saying is that, so,
he's on the public service.
the social
Oh,
service,
social service. We talked
my
about
committee.
you guys are the same.
Yes. And so, but yeah, for some reason I don't have your info.
Oh, yeah.
Let me know, because
Oh, yeah.
I need to get a hold of you.
Oh, you were? Oh.
You bring it back to order.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of this information.
Yeah, bring it back to order.
Well, yeah, especially it's the direction.
Are those good cookies? Yeah.
It's good to see my staff that makes it so great to be a part of the
I'm
recognition.
glad I can give you cookies. Whatever I can do for you.
Do one more.
So we'll call this meeting back to order.
Have all already been looked at.
Okay, so just for clarification purposes, I make sure everybody's on the same page because I didn't want to delay this any longer. I was able to get a hold of the city attorney, and he qualified that it's a simple majority, 3-2 is this vote. It does pass, it will move forward.
The commend staff, thank you.
That's your answer.
Okay, and our next agenda business is the Dog Obedience Club donation for use towards the city parks and dog bank program.
Rick Jacoby?
Sorry, we just got the bird.
Is this for Rick Jacoby?
Okay, Tracy Torrance. Once again, the Dog Obedience Group has been very generous to donate money for our doggy bag stations. We now, I like to keep track of the total amount that they have been donating, and so we're up to, let's see, currently total $49,000 plus. So it's really important we have an increasing amount of dog bags that are literally taken. We have a hard time keeping them filled up. They're very, very expensive. And so we really appreciate that the Dog Obedience Group continues to make donations to our program. So we appreciate them and requesting that the commission accept the donation of for the Dog Obedience Club, and we will use it wisely.
make a motion to accept that donation for use towards City Parks dog bag program.
Second.
Thank you.
And roll call, please.
Commissioner Candiotti,
Yes.
Commissioner Cohen,
Yes.
Commissioner Kurtzonis,
Yes.
Commissioner Love,
Yes.
Commissioner Riley,
Yes,
Chairperson Fielder.
Yes.
So we will have, Commissioner, I don't know if a letter is available there now to sign, or I'll have Cindy follow
It's not
up
here.
here on Friday. Okay.
Committee, all right, monthly department.
No, this is so I have an item, discussion or approval of February 20th.
Oh, that's right,
Parks
yes.
and Rec Commission. So this is a unique situation I want to share with you. We haven't had this for 7 years. But apparently February 12th, the February 12th meeting falls on a Wednesday, which is of course your meeting time, and it's a city holiday. So I've asked if you are interested in a dark night that night, or would you like to move your meeting to February on the 18th? Same time, same bat place, bat channel. Do you want to go dark that week, that month, or do you want to move it to the 18th?
The 18th or the 19th?
February, did she give me a wrong date?
No, it's Tuesday.
February
Tuesday.
18th.
Yeah.
it's probably due to availability.
Because there's another meeting here on that one.
So, it would be a council night, which is always fun, but it will probably be a dark council night, so it's probably why it's available. So it is Tuesday, my bad. Tuesday the 18th, or move it to March 11th? What would you choose to do?
Or not have a meeting.
That would be moving it to March 11th.
Oh.
It's been a long night.
So my recommendation would be that we have a meeting in the month of February,
Okay.
and I don't see any reason why we couldn't move it a week and do it on that Tuesday night, even though it's not our normal, as opposed to not holding one at all and just keeping the normal business flow going.
And I know the room's available, that's what
Right,
she
what she did Tuesday, right?
If that's a motion, I'll second it.
I didn't make a motion, I was just making a comment.
Do we need a motion?
You do.
Yes.
You did need a motion.
I'll make a motion. I'll make a motion that we move the February meeting to Tuesday, February 18th.
Second.
Roll call.
Commissioner Candiotti,
Yes.
Commissioner Cohen,
Yes.
Commissioner Kurtzonis,
Yes.
Commissioner Love,
Yes.
Commissioner Riley,
Yes,
Chairperson Fielder.
Yes.
Now you have the monthly department activities.
Now we're in departments.
Just for committee updates, I know there's none showing, but the Parks and Rec Commission grants were approved by City Council last night. It was kind of pulled from the consent calendar. A couple questions were asked and it eventually was approved. So the grants will be moving forward, and the contracts were approved by the city attorney's office already. So notifications will be sent to each of the grant organizations, and they should be able to get their checks shortly into January. So thank you to the grants committee, to the commission, and council for the support of that program.
Thank you.
Parks, next.
No, that was the committee update. Did you have an admin?
No, that was.
No.
Was that your admin service?
No, that was the
Oh, that was
committee.
your committee.
Yeah.
You have nothing?
Are we doing admin services? as
Yeah.
well?
Yeah.
Oh, cool. Monthly report for November is before you. If you have any questions, I will do my best to answer.
I have a question, Chair.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Certainly on, certainly.
Ms. Minner, on page 1, I'm sorry, wrong one. On page 4, there are 3 high spikes on the statistics of incidences. Can you just explain citizen assist? What does that mean? What types are those? I'm just kind of curious.
just anytime we make contact with a member of the community that either has a permit or, sometimes they come to us, sometimes we go to them.
Oh,
So
I
it's really
see.
just a communication with, it's
Oh,
not
okay.
necessarily a,
Not that they're helping you with an
Stressful
incident,
situation.
okay, all right, sorry,
it's more of a citizen contact,
okay.
where we made contact with a member of the community.
Okay, and then the other two high spikes, is that within norm for, I know this is just a month of November data, but from a trend, are those three kind of your typical norms? I'm trying to remember.
If you go back over, through the data over the years, transit issues was never this high, no. Parking violations is always going to be one of our top three. Citizen assist is a category that our new Ranger coordinator, Vic, that you have met before, over the last year and a half, has really tried to make the Rangers more adept at communicating with the public. So that's one that he's pushed, so it was never previously much of a spike.
I see.
Some of the other ones, smoking in the park is, seems on the low side, even though it's 65 contacts during the month, or during the year. That's definitely one of the larger ones. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. Graffiti goes in spurts, the graffiti call it. So, but yeah, I think for the last 6 months, these would be typical high numbers, yes.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Parks?
Good evening.
I
Tracy Park Services.
Oh, I'm sorry.
had a question.
Oh,
You didn't see the light.
microphone.
You didn't see the light. Excuse me, Mr. Minturn. Then, in theory, the higher that citizen assist is, actually the better it is, because then our park rangers are doing a really good job of communicating and working with the citizens. Am I right to understand that?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Now it's your turn, Tracy.
Okay, we came into November feeling like December, but looking like November. So it was very nice to have a little bit of weather change, and the weather plays a dramatic role in our services, and they continue, but they can be beneficial as the cooler weather comes along. Things grow a little slower, but there's a little opportunity to catch up and shift people around to things that we might have been ignoring during the summer, and this year's no different. We have been continuing to do a little bit of work with areas where we know people do donuts. And managed to do part of Torrance Park on the Santa Fe side. We did the exact same thing on the north side and got those bumper stops in there, and voila, we have no more issues. So that was kind of fun to get that done. Really, really big project over at the golf course. The contractor there did a phenomenal job getting in and out of there in 2 weeks. Really good work with the recreation department, working together with schedule and having minimal impact. All of the wiring to all of the heads on the golf course has been redone. And they even invented a unit that tucks underneath the sprinkler head for the decoder. So the messenger, if you will, of the electronic information goes to the clock, and it works. Everything works. We're struggling right now with one of the clocks. Isn't working real well, but it's under warranty, and we're still working with that. It's doesn't appear to be a contract thing. So it's a big project that's gotten done. That is it's an excellent project. That went very, very well. We continue to work over at Sunny Glen. We're happy to say that the compaction and the filling of the major valleys in between the little hills that we did do so far, we did not puddle water for the first time in many, many years, so that was very nice. 260 feet of concrete was laid, and that they did a phenomenal job with that. If you don't get a chance, and I know you guys don't get out as much as you want to, but to lay concrete and to see that all the way through the process as far as the preparation and the weaving together, literally tying every single cross member on rebar by hand, all the hand cut forms and all that, it's really art. And we walk across these sidewalks all the time, and a lot of this is done by machinery now in public places, but in parks it's not. And I think it's just a really amazing process, and our guys are doing really well. They're about halfway done with the process. We got pulled off to help with Jason's working on the Cerro Brea playground project. we are of course assisting with that, and that was also a really, really tremendous project that should open probably at the end of the week. We're working on that. The other part of that is, and I love the serendipitous moment that happened, that as soon as we were finished installing Dean Hardison's bench, Lowell walked up. He was the first person to sit on it. And so we took pictures on it and just had a really, one of those moments in time where you just, that was just really special. And it wasn't me, it was the project's crew, it was Jason and everybody really working together to make that happen. And then serendipity walked right in the door. It was perfect. So that was really, really fun. Over at the Nature Center, of course, the rain is a tremendous asset to the land there, and that's working out. That worked out really well. That Litza the manager there had a really tight schedule to get everything done, and really, really worked hard to get everybody on board and move together and get that project done. Just literally at the beginning of the raindrops blowing off the land and getting all of that done. So kudos to them for doing a marvelous job on that. So those are the highlights. So if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. Oh, sorry, I didn't get into the packet. I forgot to hit send.
Thank you. Recreation Services.
Yes, Chairperson, fellow commissioners, you have a report prepared for you for the Recreation Services Division for last month. A few of the highlights. On the last page of the report are a few photos pertaining to the mural that was completed at the Plunge, called Dive In. It looks a lot better in color when you go out there in person, but it still turned out pretty good. We're pretty happy about it. It was long time from start to finish, but the finished product we're really proud of. And we want to thank the Journey of Faith Church and local outreach coordinator Alicia Allen, as well as the artist Emily Brantley for all their efforts to get this thing done. It's a big project, volunteer work done. Also, the refurbished pool bulkhead looks pretty sharp out there. You can see in the pictures on those last couple of pages. It's the thing that goes down the middle with the starting blocks all the way across it. And the starting blocks really look sharp. I really wish that would have turned out in color, but it didn't. So, but if you want to go over and take a look during the daytime, it looks pretty sharp. So we're happy about both of those two big projects over at the Plunge that got taken care of. It took quite a while to get done, start to finish. For the rest of the month, I would highlight one of the After School Club that's at 15 sites at the Torrance Unified School District. Every month they do some sort of a special community project, and last month they did all the kids made placemats that we took over to Bartlett Senior Center for their lunch program. So that was kind of neat. And our Special Olympics Adaptive Sports program participated in the LA Regional Games at Fountain Valley on November 9th and 10th with softball, golf, and soccer teams. And it was the first time we'd had a softball team in quite some time. So that was a neat thing that we did. And of course, the big highlight of last month was our 40th annual Turkey Trot fun run. And it rained. It rained and it was cold, and it rained the day before, so staff setting up were wet all day the day before, and they were wet all day the day of the event. But we were pleasantly surprised that a large contingency of runners showed up. We had over 3,600 people registered, and it's hard to say exactly how many people because we don't exactly count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But there was a large number of people, probably over 2,000, that actually ran the race. So that was pretty neat. And one thing I kept saying to staff all day was, nobody would remember the nice days when we had a tree company. But I'll remember the day that it rained because it was the first time it rained in 40 years actually at event time. So that's kind of neat. Our youth councils, speaking of rain, we had our Christmas boutique this past Sunday at Wilson Park, and guess what? Rained again. But at least staff had ponchos, so we were ready for it. It only rained a couple of times during the boutique though, but there were a lot of people out there shopping, even with umbrellas, walking around, pastry booths, shopping, buying Christmas stuff. So that was kind of cool. The Bartlett Senior Center held its annual Thanksgiving meal, and about 80 seniors participated in that event. It always is full, it always sells out. And our chef down there just does a really great job with the stuff that he's given under all circumstances, but he does a really great Thanksgiving meal, and people love it. Really look forward to it. It was neat. Another thing that's happened down at Bartlett Center is the air conditioning equipment. It's been a long, long time coming, to the tune of about 4 years. Finally got completed. It hasn't been signed off on yet, but at least it's all installed and good to go. And so the lower level where the shuffleboard courts are is all going to be air conditioning now. So it's been hot before. A lot of other stuff going on, but with that, I'll end my presentation. If you have any questions, I'll try to answer them.
Thank you. Brings us to oral communications number 2. Would anyone from the audience, community, like to have a word? No, well then we'll go to you, Mr. Jones.
Thank you, I appreciate it. I wanted to just very briefly thank the commission for, again, supporting the Turkey Trot. It's one of our long-lasting special events that we have in the city, and the community loves it. They adore it, and it was demonstrated again with approximately, 3,500?
We had over 3,600 registered.
3,600 registered, and we had well over, I think, well over 2,000. Yeah. That's a lot.
Yeah.
Runners kept coming, and they kept finishing across the clean finish course. What was the lady, 90?
Oh, you're gonna ask me to know that off the top of my head.
So we've also, I think, a 90-year-old participant.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Finished the race. And it was announced before the crowd, and the crowd applauded her, and it was really great. A great event. Thank you, Commissioner Fields, for starting the race. Your name will always be known as the race master in the rain, who kicked off the only rainy day event. It's a positive thing.
So it won't be the one that fired gun before the pace cars left.
Well, we won't use that. I think our pace
We're that too, but we
I think our pace car probably should have been a little further up, but I think the rain, what happened really is the windows were up and they just didn't hear it yet. But bottom line is, it was a great event. Thank you for all your support, and happy holidays to all of you, and enjoy your families and the time you have with your families. Thank you so much.
Happy holidays to everybody. It's kind of hard to believe it's already been a wonderful year.
Happy holidays. Thank you guys for another wonderful year. And look forward to an exciting start to 2020, I'm sure.
Same, see you next year.
Andrew?
I don't have anything else to add other than it's been another great year being on the commission, and again, just to wish everybody happy holidays, and see you next year in 2020.
Again, I would like to say the same, happy holidays. 2020, it's pretty unbelievable.
I'm next on that thing. I like.
I don't know any order.
Here you go. But it's printed. I want to thank these 4 great members of our commission that really hold everything together and keep us in order and keep us in line and do so much for not only the commission but the whole city. So I just want to say that from, just personally, that it's really appreciated. The happy holidays goes without saying, I think, as has everybody, wishes that on everybody. But again, and Debbie, thank you too for all the work that you do as well. Ted is so quiet over there, but I've known her for 11 years and she does such a great job. So anyway, that's it. Thank you very much and happy holiday.
Go ahead, David.
I'm sorry. I was disappointed that I missed the Turkey Trot and the retirement party because I was in Colorado. I will make a concerted effort.
We'll make you run it twice.
Yeah, I will. I'm back and forth. Yes, exactly. And Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, Happy Hanukkah, Happy Holidays, whatever you do with your family. Enjoy yourselves. It's been an honor being welcomed onto this commission with you guys.
You're still stuck with us for another 3.5 years.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
You say that now.
And so to add to that, other than my 2 cents, and remember the flag.
I said, what? Thank you.
For me personally, it was very interesting to be handed a gun in front of a large crowd of people.
Starting pistol.
A starting pistol, that's right.
Starting pistol, but I am very happy to say, I fired a 38 and that's a little 22. Otherwise, happy holidays, be safe, we'll see you all next year. And thank you all for coming out tonight. And I'm glad we were finally able to solve this problem at that one park.
I'll make a motion to adjourn until the February 18th meeting.
No.
Oh, January meeting, I'm sorry. January.
Just say the date.
Oh, January 8th, sorry.
February, let's say the January.
Is it really January?
Second. Sounds good.
Shoot.
Commissioner Candiotti,
Yes.
Commissioner Cohen,
Yes.
Commissioner Turkso,
Yes.
Commissioner Nutt, Commissioner Riley,
Yes.
Chairperson Stevens.
Yes.
We did, yeah.